63 seconds. That is how long the silence lasted. 63 seconds of absolute nothing. No words. No movement. No attempt at a defense. Just a woman sitting behind a microphone, staring at a single piece of paper, while the color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug at the base of her skull. The camera caught everything. The trembling lower lip, the fingers gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white, and the eyes, those eyes that had spent the last 4 hours projecting authority and control suddenly looked like they belonged to someone who had just realized the floor beneath her chair was gone. 63 seconds. That is not a pause. That is not someone collecting their thoughts. That is the sound of a career imploding in real time. And here is the part that should disturb you. Not a single mainstream outlet ran this clip, not one. They had cameras in that room. They had reporters in those seats. They watched it happen and they buried it. That is exactly why channels like this one exist. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now because the information you are about to hear was supposed to stay behind closed doors. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications, because after this video drops they are going to do everything they can to make sure you never see it. Let us rewind. Let us go back to the morning before those 63 seconds happened and set the stage properly so you understand exactly how calculated, how surgical, and how devastating this moment truly was. The hearing had been scheduled for weeks. On paper it was routine. An oversight committee review of departmental spending and internal hiring practices. The kind of thing that usually generates about as much public interest as a zoning board meeting. But behind the scenes something very different was happening. 3 days before the hearing a sealed envelope had been delivered to the office of a senior member of the committee. Inside that envelope was a single bank receipt, not a report. Not a summary. A receipt, 1 page. 1 transaction. 1 number that did not match anything in the official record. And that single receipt set off a chain of events that turned what should have been a forgettable Tuesday morning into one of the most explosive moments in recent congressional history. The room that morning was packed but not with the usual crowd. There were more lawyers than journalists. That is always the first sign. When the legal teams outnumber the press corps, you know someone behind the scenes is terrified. Pam Bondi arrived early. That was unusual. She walked in flanked by 4 aides, each carrying matching leather briefcases, and she sat down at the witness table with the kind of composure that only comes from hours of preparation. Her water glass was perfectly positioned. Her papers were stacked in 3 neat piles. Her posture was straight, chin slightly elevated, projecting the unmistakable body language of someone who believed she was untouchable. She even smiled at the committee members as they filed in. A small confident smile. The kind of smile that says, I know what you are going to ask and I have rehearsed every answer. For the first 2 hours that confidence appeared justified. One by one committee members lobbed questions about budget allocations and staffing decisions, and Pam Bondi handled each one with the practiced ease of someone who had done this dozens of times before. She cited figures. She referenced internal audits. She deferred to institutional processes with the smooth precision of a machine built specifically for this kind of theater. By the 90-minute mark, half the journalists in the back row were checking their phones. Nothing was happening. Nothing was supposed to happen. That was the plan. Then Massie walked in. He was late. Deliberately late. He entered through the side door carrying nothing but a single thin blue folder. Not a briefcase. Not a stack of binders. 1 folder. It was so thin it could not have held more than 4 or 5 pages. He did not acknowledge anyone as he took his seat. He did not make small talk with the colleagues on either side of him. He simply sat down, placed that blue folder on the desk in front of him, and rested both hands flat on top of it. Pam Bondi noticed. You could see it. A micro shift in her posture. A barely perceptible tilt of the head toward the aides sitting behind her. It lasted less than a second, but the camera caught it. She had been briefed on every member of this committee. She knew their tendencies, their political motivations, their lines of questioning from previous hearings. But she did not know what was inside that blue folder. And that uncertainty, that tiny crack in the wall of preparation, was exactly where the next 3 hours would live. Massie waited. He let 2 more colleagues ask their questions first. Standard procedural inquiries. Safe territory. While they spoke, he never opened the folder. He never looked at it. He just sat there with his hands resting on top of it like a man who had all the time in the world. Pam Bondi kept glancing at it. Quick darting looks between answers. She was trying to read the room, and the room was not giving her anything. When his turn finally came, Thomas Massie leaned forward and did something none of the other committee members had done. He did not start with a question. He started with a date. He said a specific date from 11 months ago, and asked Pam Bondi if she recalled what happened on that day. She paused. Not a long pause. Maybe 2 seconds. Then she said she would need to check her records to give an accurate answer. Thomas Massie nodded. He said that was perfectly understandable. Then he said a second date. 6 days after the first. And he asked if she recalled what happened on that date. Another pause. This one slightly longer. She gave the same answer. She would need to consult her records. Thomas Massie nodded again. Then he opened the blue folder for the first time. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. 1 page. He held it up so the cameras could see it but not read it. He said this is a bank receipt showing an electronic wire transfer made on the first date he had mentioned. He said the transfer originated from an account that was not listed in any of the department's official financial disclosures. He said the amount was significant. Then he read the number. And the room changed. You could feel it through the screen. That shift in atmospheric pressure that happens when something real cuts through the performance. Reporters in the back row put their phones down. The aides behind Pam Bondi stopped writing. One of them leaned forward and whispered something, but Pam Bondi did not respond. She was staring at the receipt in Thomas Massie's hand with an expression that had lost every trace of the confidence she had walked in with. Thomas Massie continued. He did not raise his voice. He did not grandstand. He spoke the way a prosecutor speaks to a jury when the evidence is strong enough to do the work on its own. He said the wire transfer went to an offshore account. He said that offshore account received 4 additional transfers over the following 9 weeks, each one slightly below the reporting threshold. He said the total across all 5 transactions was a number that would have triggered automatic review had it been processed as a single payment. He said the timing of these transfers corresponded precisely with 3 specific internal decisions made by Pam Bondi's office during the same period. He laid each fact on the table one after another like a mason laying bricks. No emotion. No accusation. Just facts stacked in a sequence that tightened like a noose. Now I need to stop here for a moment. I need you to understand something. The information you are hearing right now, this exact sequence of events, was not covered by any major news outlet with this level of detail. This is the part where I ask you to do something simple. If you believe these facts deserve to be seen, hit the like button right now. Hit the hype button. Share this video with one person. Not because it helps me. Because every like, every share, every comment tells the algorithm that people want the truth. And when the algorithm pushes this video, it gets harder for anyone to pretend this never happened. Do it now. I will wait. Good. Pam Bondi's response to the wire transfer question was where everything unraveled. She started with the phrase she had used all morning. She said she would need to review the specific documentation before commenting on that matter. But Thomas Massie was ready for that. He reached back into the blue folder and pulled out a second page. He said this page was a printout of an internal email sent from Pam Bondi's personal account, not her department account, her personal account, to an address associated with the entity that controlled the offshore account. The email was sent 48 hours before the first wire transfer. He read the timestamp. He read the subject line. He did not read the body of the email. He simply asked Pam Bondi if she could explain why she was communicating with this entity from a personal email address 2 days before a 6-figure transfer appeared in an account that was never disclosed to this committee. And that was when it happened. Pam Bondi opened her mouth. Then she closed it. Her right hand moved toward her water glass but stopped halfway. Her aide leaned in again, and this time the whisper was urgent enough that you could see the aide's jaw moving rapidly. Pam Bondi's chief counsel, seated 2 chairs behind her, shifted forward in his seat and placed both hands on his knees as if preparing to stand. But no one spoke. No one interrupted. Thomas Massie simply sat there, both hands now resting calmly on the desk, and waited. 63 seconds. The silence expanded like a gas filling every corner of that room. You could hear the mechanical hum of the ventilation system. You could hear the faint scratch of a pen somewhere in the press gallery, as a reporter wrote something down. You could hear the creak of a chair as someone in the second row shifted their weight. But from the witness table there was nothing. Pam Bondi sat perfectly still with her lips slightly parted and her eyes locked on a point somewhere in the middle distance between her microphone and the edge of the table. Her hands were flat on the surface in front of her, and if you watched closely, and the high-definition cameras made it impossible not to watch closely, you could see a faint tremor in her left hand. Not a shake. A tremor. The kind of involuntary micro-movement that the body produces when the conscious mind has temporarily lost control of the messaging. Thomas Massie did not fill the silence. That was the devastating part. Any other politician would have jumped in. They would have rephrased the question. They would have pressed harder. But Thomas Massie understood something that most people in that room did not. He understood that silence is the most powerful cross-examination tool that exists. When you ask a question that has no good answer, the worst thing you can do is give the witness an exit ramp. You let the silence do the work. You let the camera do the work. You let the audience at home watch a person who arrived in that room radiating authority slowly dissolve into someone who cannot produce a single syllable in her own defense. When Pam Bondi finally spoke, her voice was different. Lower. Tighter. She said she was not in a position to discuss specific financial transactions without her legal counsel present in an advisory capacity. Thomas Massie pointed out that her legal counsel was in fact seated directly behind her, and had been present all morning. Pam Bondi did not turn around. She did not look at her counsel. She stared straight ahead and said she would need to provide a written response at a later date. Thomas Massie closed the blue folder. He did it slowly. Deliberately. The way someone closes a book when they have already read the ending and they know you have not. He placed both hands back on top of it, and leaned into his microphone one final time. He said he would be submitting a formal request for all communication records between Pam Bondi's personal accounts and any entities associated with the offshore transfers. He said he would be requesting an independent audit of every transaction flagged by the receipt in his possession. And then he said something that sent a visible ripple through the legal team seated behind Pam Bondi. He said the committee had reason to believe that the documents in this folder represented only a fraction of the material currently under review, and that additional evidence would be presented in a closed session already scheduled for the following week. Pam Bondi did not react. She sat motionless while the chamber erupted into the low buzz of reporters talking over each other and aides pulling out phones. Her chief counsel stood up and placed a hand on her shoulder from behind. She flinched. It was small, but it was unmistakable. A woman who had spent 3 decades projecting impenetrable composure flinched at a touch from her own lawyer. Now I want you to sit with what you just heard. This is not about one person. This is not about one transaction or one hearing or one committee. This is about a system that allows people in positions of extraordinary power to move money through channels designed to avoid detection, to communicate through accounts designed to avoid oversight, and to sit in rooms built for accountability while producing nothing but silence. The question is not whether this happened. You just watched it happen. The question is what happens next. And that question is not answered by politicians or journalists or algorithms. It is answered by you. The people watching this right now are the jury. You are the oversight that the system forgot to account for. Every time you share this video, every time you send it to someone who has not seen it, you become part of a mechanism that the architects of this kind of arrangement never planned for. For those of you who have been with this channel since the beginning, you already know about the 47 Club. For those who are new, let me explain. The 47 Club is our inner circle. It is where we release uncut footage, source documents, and detailed breakdowns of cases like this one before they go public on the main channel. Members of the 47 Club got access to the bank receipt analysis 72 hours before this video was filmed. If you want to be the first to see what comes out of next week's closed session, the link to join is in the description below and pinned in the comments. Now here is what I need you to understand before I go. That closed session I just mentioned is not hypothetical. It is scheduled. It is happening. And the material that will be presented in that room makes the blue folder look like a table of contents. We have already confirmed that at least 3 additional categories of documentation have been submitted to the committee, including records that Pam Bondi's office attempted to have sealed under executive privilege just 48 hours ago. That request was denied, which means those records are now in the hands of committee members who have already demonstrated they are willing to use them. Tomorrow I will be releasing a detailed breakdown of what we expect to emerge from that session based on sources close to the committee. Make sure your notifications are turned on because that video will go live early, and it will not stay quiet for long. This is not the end of this story. This is the first page. I will see you tomorrow.